I know. I already know what you're thinking. This again. We're going down this road again. We're really talking about this once again. And then there's going to be people that are like, well, no kidding. There's going to be a revision of the Switch, a potential new system eventually. It's been nearly 5 years since the system has been released. But looking back at all of the Switch Pro hoopla from 2021, which, I mean, I'll keep it a buck. I was definitely one of the big forefront champions of that. Of course, all of my information was coming from places like Bloomberg and Mochizuki, the Wall Street Journal, whatever the case is. We all know how that story ended up. We ended up with the Nintendo Switch OLED model, not a Switch Pro. It does have a better screen, but it doesn't have a beefier inside, and it doesn't play games any better. So at the end of the day, I have to take an L on that. I was definitely very confident that this is what Nintendo was going to do based on the reports that all of us saw, but you know, whatever. I'll take a loss on it. And since then, I've really tried to avoid talking about any sort of thing because it's all just been basically speculation. It's all been reports from different individuals within the video game industry. Now, we did see some stuff about patents related to some things that it looked like Nintendo was working on some potential DLSS technology, which we'll talk a lot about in this video. But as far as concrete information was concerned, there wasn't really any. It was all just based on speculation from places like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. So I cooled off on it. Because, you know, I didn't want to take another L again. But now things are very different because we have basically information that we're definitely not supposed to have coming to us from Nvidia themselves, which of course designed the Tegra X1, which is utilized in the Nintendo Switch. And something's happening. Something's coming. I don't know when it's coming. I don't know what it's going to look like, but something is coming and we have the proof right here in front of us. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video because I'm excited for it. I love new hardware. I always try to talk about new hardware when it's revealed, no matter what platform it is, because I find new hardware to be fascinating. But looking at the Nintendo Switch side of things, we all know we need a beefier system. We understand that. We understand that the technology is a bit dated. The games themselves are showing a bit of wear and tear when it comes to even first-party titles. We know that something has to come, and we know that something will come. It's obvious that Nintendo's going to make another system. Like, no shit, Sherlock. This is what video game companies do. They release a system, then they work on either revisions of the system or start looking towards the future for a new model, a successor to the system. But here's where this information is coming from, because like I said, this is the first time that we've actually seen essentially concrete information. Now, the way this information was gathered is nefarious. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a good thing that this information came out, because basically Nvidia is the victim of a cyber attack, and basically somebody went into their server, stole all the information, posted it online. I'm not condoning that. Pretty much anything with the word cyber in front of it usually isn't good. I mean, Cyber Monday is a good thing because you could save money, but like cyber attacks, that's not cool. Cyber harassment, cyber stalking, that's not cool. Cyber sex, that's not cool. It's 2022. Get your mind right, men. And I guess women do cyber sex too. Like, stop doing that. Just stop doing that. Your time can be valuable for other things. But a cyber attack is never a good thing. And the way that the information is being provided to us from this cyber attack, you know, it sucks. But since the information is out there, we might as well talk about it. Now, I obviously am an idiot, and I don't know a lot about technology, but I do know some basic terms and things like that. So I'm going to kind of break it down for you in the kind of idiot's guide for it. You know, essentially, I'm sure SpawnWave is going to make a video on this when he talks about it at 8 a.m. I'm going at 7 a.m. Am I going before SpawnWave to try to steal some views? Hell yes, I am. All right. It's a jungle out there, and I'm just trying to get my piece of the pie. But basically, within this information, we could see an image here that basically shows us some of the different things that were found. All right. So this write-up is being done by Tech Power Up. Basically, the information DLSS sword code leaked for Nvidia. Yes, it was a cyber attack. It's not a good thing. We're not promoting cyber attacks, but the information's out there, so we're going to talk about it. Basically, looking over this information here's the stuff. Here's the nitty-gritty of the stuff. And when you first look at it, you're probably like me and you're like, this means absolutely nothing. And NVEN, DLSS backend, DLSS debugging, Cuban platforms. Like, this means nothing. This is just a bunch of different files and a bunch of different registries. C++. I remember like C++ from high school. Some of my friends were doing coding and they were always doing it on C++. Registration entries. Basically a bunch of just mumbo jumbo to me. But where things get very interesting is the NVEN2 file as seen here. Now, NVEN1 was actually an API that Nintendo Switch programs against, basically to utilize the Nvidia Tegra X1 that was utilized in the system. Nvidia themselves actually created NVEN that was developed specifically for Nintendo when it came to their system. So NVEN2 would have to mean another system, because it's not utilizing the same Tegra X1. The Nintendo Switch OLED model is not utilizing a different chipset or anything like that. It's utilizing a different screen. Same thing with the Switch Lite. Same thing with all of the Switch revisions we've gotten. The battery, a life improvement system, all of these systems are still using NVEN right now. But NVEN2 is obviously a successor to the system. So something is happening. And when you start to think about it like that, it becomes very interesting, because what do all these NVEN files that we're actually looking at sort of talk about? Well, let's go back to the graphic here and see. NVEN2 DLSS, NVEN2 DLSS, NVEN2 DLSS, NVEN2 DLSS, all this stuff is involving the DLSS side of things, which, if you know anything about DLSS, that's what we've been talking about on this channel as coming in a new Nintendo Switch model since pretty much the inception of the idea of the concept of this being a actual reality, because Nintendo's never going to get into the powers race, especially when you're talking about a system that's essentially a handheld along with a home console at the end of the day. Now, you can talk about Steam Deck and things like that, but that's a completely different beast to me. This isn't anything that Nintendo would want to get themselves into. So how can you increase your production? How can you increase the power output of a Switch without getting too crazy, without absolutely obliterating the battery life, and still utilizing something that consumers are familiar with, consumers are still familiar with? It's talking about adding in DLSS technology, which of course is artificial upscaling that allows companies to basically take their games, utilize this DLSS technology, and of course improve them, improve things like textures, improve things like resolution, improve things like frame rate, and more importantly, that's what we've been talking about with this Nintendo Switch, whatever, a Pro, a Switch 2, a full-on successor, whatever the hell you want to call it. Something is obviously in development. Something is obviously in development because of the NVEN2, which we just talked about. Something is obviously in development utilizing DLSS technology or DLSS technology because of the fact that we just saw that. We just saw that. And that's what we've always been speculating about for this system. Now, with all of this information, and like I said, I mean, this is crystal clear here. Like, I'm sure tech nerds, I'm sure MVG will probably dip his toe in this too, be like, I know about these kernels, I know about these debugs and this Cubans and the constants and the captures, I know all about that because I'm a British man, pip pip cheerio. But with this information essentially in front of our face, we have to accept the fact that, yes, Nintendo is indeed working on a new system. Nobody's going to question that. Nobody's going to question that a video game company is working on a successor to their system. But what kind of successor is it? And more importantly, how far along is this successor? How far along in the development cycle has this been going on? Because if this has been going on for a little bit of time now, you could end up seeing the system potentially in 2023. I don't see why you potentially couldn't see the system. And I know we have to go back because there's so many things that sort of refute against this, but you have to take these things that Nintendo as a company says at face value. President Furukawa saying we're halfway through the Switch's life cycle. But if you're halfway through a life cycle, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't add a different version of that system, because Nintendo themselves, although I completely disagree with it, Nintendo themselves actually clarifies the Game Boy Color as a version of the Game Boy. When you look at sales statistics for the Game Boy, it actually includes the Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color was more powerful. The Game Boy Color was in freaking color. It was a completely different system. It had its own library of games. It was also backwards compatible with the Game Boy, but Nintendo classifies that as the same system within the same life cycle. The new Game Boy life cycle actually didn't technically start for Nintendo, which I think is batshit crazy and wrong, and I will fight it to the end of the day because the Game Boy Color is an advanced system. It is a different system than the Game Boy, but Nintendo clarifies those systems together. The Game Boy Advance was considered the successor to both of those systems, and I feel like the wording of this is what we really have to look at here, because they're not saying that there's not going to be a revised model. They're just saying that for the Switch, it's going to be in its halfway point of its life cycle. And what better way to extend that life cycle? What better way to sort of do the things we've been talking about, you know, the potential for it to be like a cell phone thing where there's incremental upgrades to these pretty much every year or every 2 years so that consumers can choose what's important to them. What better way to do that than adding in this system into your family of systems? You basically get rid of the old Nintendo Switch model. You use the OLED as the new old model. That's the base model. You still have your Switch Lite, and then you have this premium system coming along. So I know you're not gonna believe any of this. You're gonna complain about it, and I don't blame you, because even with this information right here in front of my face, even with people talking about it online, reputable people talking about it online, I still second guess it sometimes, because we've been down this road before, and I don't know how I'm gonna title this video either. Like it's very, you know, you got to kind of step on, you know, watch your step with it, because if you say a Switch Pro or a Switch 2, people seem to lose their collective minds over this and just go batshit crazy. But you have to accept the reality that a new system is indeed going to be coming. This is proof that a system is indeed in the works, unless Nvidia just decided to utilize the NVEN thing that they use specifically for the Switch on something else. That's pretty much what you're going to say if you don't believe any of this information, that for some reason something specifically designed for Nintendo is now going to be used for another company, which absolutely makes no sense. So I don't know. And you know, I'm not going to go down that road. I've heard some things off the record, but we're not going to talk about that. It's going to be very interesting. I think 2022 has the potential to be a freaking crazy year for all video game systems, for all video game companies. Look at how much stuff has happened in just January and February. And now we're starting off March and there's this huge leak. And it's like, man, things are heating up. And, you know, as a video game channel, hey, I'm loving it, man. I'm absolutely loving it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this. That's basically the layman's terms for this, because I'm sure a lot of us don't understand all the technical mumbo jumbo and jargon with all this stuff. Spawnwave, I'm sure we'll talk about it in his video in the morning. Make sure you guys check out his video after watching my video. Tell him I sent you there. You know, good old Spawnwave. He's been a buddy of mine for a very long time now, actually. But give me your thoughts on this in the comments section down below. Do you think this is a Pro? Is it a Switch 2? How are they going to call it? Will they even call it, you know, something sort of different? I mean, obviously the Switch OLED, that's the name of the system. It's called the Nintendo Switch OLED. How do you feel like Nintendo's going to talk about this system? When are they going to talk about this system, and when is it going to see the marketplace? Because, man, it's heating up. It's heating up, folks. And as always, thank you guys for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like and share the video. My internet is fixed. Juan from Optimum came over. Very cool guy and loved my setup down here. Very nice gentleman. Thank you. Shout outs to Juan. Juan, you are the GOAT. You are the MVP for fixing my internet. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.